I just want to say thank you again for having me. I think I think it is it's just a massive reminder, especially with the current situation with the pandemic, that all deaths matter. And I think there's two reasons why I'm here today. One is to obviously share my work, but most importantly is to let you into a little bit of the complexity of what happens when a Yemeni British young person searches themselves online. And the reason why I share this today is because this became quite personal to a campaign that we started working on during COVID. And it became really, really personal to me because when I typed in Yemen on Google, all I saw was young men AK-47s. And then I asked all my friends around the world, from east to west, to do the same. And when they shared the images that came up, it was the same images. I remember saying to myself, is my home only young men AK-47s? There wasn't any light on the complexity of the war. There wasn't any on the exposure on the deaths of young people. It was just young men, AK-47s, and terror. And I remember saying to myself, what can I do with this campaign? And I remember saying to myself, if we were to remember the past, we also have to change our present so that our future can become a more peaceful and sustainable place to live in. And I remember growing up in school, I would always identify myself as, British. I was really proud to be British. And yet I am still, but I now go by I'm Yemeni British, or I'm Yemeni Scouse, to make it even more specific. And the reason why is because there's this identity complex that you grow up with, especially when you emigrate from one place to another. And when the war in Yemen began, I started asking myself, how can my British government profit from a war that is killing my home country, that is destroying buildings older than Britain, that is destroying histories and legacies, that is destroying, young people's hope. And then I started, and as a writer, this kind of like reflects in your writing. You start becoming really confused, and you're thinking, I'm really proud to be Scouse, I'm really proud to be British, but I feel so hypocritical. I feel like I'm not worthy enough to celebrate my identities. So this campaign became really, really vital, and it became so personal, and I'm probably not making sense at all, but this is probably the journey as a writer. And this is probably my journey as a writer, to understand and to make sense of the world a little bit more than I did yesterday. And when I started becoming very active on the war in Yemen, and and kind of challenging the arms trade, and and to kind of challenge this idea is, why is it that the war in Yemen is still continuing? Why is it that the war in Yemen has not yet stopped? And the answer to that is very simple. Is profit. When money is involved, then war will continue. And this is why I urge everyone that is watching, please challenge your MPs. Your MPs are there to represent you. You voted for them to represent your concerns. So please challenge them. I know we are facing a pandemic and things seem a little bit crowded, but the Yemeni people cannot wait any longer. And I'm not saying this as a Yemeni person, I'm saying this as a human being. The Yemeni people cannot wait. So please challenge your MPs. Tell them what are they doing to challenge the Tory government in actually suspending arms to Saudi Arabia until there is a peace process that works for the people of Yemen. But yeah, I think I'll end it there on Yemen. If you do want to search more about Yemen, I would say contact and follow journalists on Twitter who are based in Yemen. They will give you the truth. They will give you a more realistic image of what Yemen looks like today. So I'm going to go on to now perform one of my poems called Victory is Far From Ours. And this poem was commissioned from IWM, and they told me to write about what victory means to me, celebrating the 75th anniversary of V-Day. And I really struggled with this poem because it's like when I wore my first poppy in school, I didn't feel like I belonged to celebrate that because it wasn't about it. The deaths that we were celebrating did not look like the people that look like me. And I felt like, and even though I stand by that we should all challenge war in all aspects, this is all about all victims of war, whether it's in our past and our present. But sometimes mainstream media excludes certain types of groups and people just don't get enough coverage. And what happens is, especially when I've gone to Parliament and when they talk about Yemen, they say 100,000 children are dead. And I remember challenging that in Parliament. I said, how can we physically, as a human being, see 100,000 deaths in our head? And what happens is we dehumanize people's lives. I said, I want people's names. Like the way we celebrate deaths of our past in Britain. But yet I felt like, Yemeni deaths were quite reduced to numbers, but it's more than that. So this poem kind of went through that journey, went through that anger, that frustration. So I'm going to read it out to you because I'm a lot better at reading poetry than I am at speaking. Victory is far from ours. I married the world to understand it. But the earth is too dry, perished in complete darkness to paint blue skies. Because when was the last time I looked up? And I hid under classroom desks, meddling my fingers in someone else's story, guarded by warlocks, to blindly see what was beneath paper made of ashes and the terror that lives in our children. And between this bullet and trigger is always God's given right to live. And I hid under classroom desks, learning of the great wars and my own ink of my forefathers we yet to name, bleeding to death inside of me and a gravestone found in heaven. Yesterday's history is a calamity in our world of 1,000 mothers and an orphan child lost on the streets, searching for its rightful home. Our secret between borders. Because between this oppressor and the man-made missiles is always God's given right to live. And I hid under classroom desks, skipping pages as my eyes grew confused of the black and white moving pictures and we part waves. Waving our greetings and farewells. Is another suicide in our trenches, is a child cradling war in its first steps in the rubbles of destruction. And when death is part of their national anthem, then what is victory? Drowning in army coats, standing in line bigger than their feet, swinging AK-47s around their necks, digging holes in their back gardens with their names engraved in backstones, in headstones. And what is victory? Between this missile and the target is always God's given right to live. And we mourn dressed in black, scatter our flowers, fill our fields in colours, and stand in stillness while those who plant bombs in people's homes for the fuse to light up. Cradling war in our arms is not our victory, and waiting for the victors to write history is not our victory, and guarded by the oppressed is not our victory. and victory is far from ours, and it does not belong to me. So thank you. I'm just going to go on now to do my second piece, which is a love letter to Yemen, which is a piece that I wrote at the very beginning of the war. I knew nothing of Yemen. I just knew that I was Yemeni. I knew nothing of its history. I didn't really celebrate it much. Every time we would visit Yemen in the summer holidays, I would literally can't wait to come back to the UK. And I think it's that identity complex, this thing of you have to sacrifice one home for the other. But no, of course not. I've learned and I've wised enough to say you definitely can have both identities. But I think this piece is more of kind of yearning to, you know, when the war began in Yemen, I started thinking to myself, what if I lost home? What would that look like? So I think this poem, as a 19-year-old Amina, was trying to cling on back in, or yearning back, or yearning for home, or clinging onto home, or this idea of home. So this is called What Do I Know? What do I know of people of Yemen? You see, the truth is within my genes. And I belong under the shades of the trees as the sun tries to control all of me. But what do I know? I travelled miles away at the age of 4 to a land I called home. But my heart never approved, because something was missing. And upon my eyes I sit above to unfold the truth, this inner beauty. But so gracefully you sit, you waved hello. You waved hello, but I never had the time to say goodbye. But you reaffined in the style of your own, and you walked along simply, the life undesigned and polished with original history lessons that was taught to mankind. But so charming you fall. But so charming you fall. Sorry. But so charming you fall, and you attract the eyes of those who don't know. And as I gazed alongside to the birds that chant early morning, rise, rise, people of Yemen. Because your morning shift has begun, oh people of Yemen, what do I know? Because some of which work 6 hours a day, or some that work a lifetime travelling around to find a home to stay. But so gracefully they say, we are the travellers, and we are the Arabs. And I remember the warmth of the sun upon my skin, and that rain that painted villages wet, all of the ground streaming down as they followed each other, patterned beautifully. Because they were designed to obey, to respect the system and wonders and worship and devotion. And a miracle upon the heaving sea, and that nighttime, a wink of sleep dreamt a lifetime of unfolding dreams, and that star. Because I remember that star that lit to outshine them all, O people of Yemen. What do I know? Because as the tides flow upon my bloodstream, that mixes between every tear drowned and every poverty forgotten, and the dry mouths that never complained of its sorrows and its tomorrows, because the world has forgotten. Because the world has forgotten. And what do I know, O people of Yemen? Because I left you for too long. You asked about me, but I never returned. And this is the beat to my heart crying out loud. And as I was standing in the rivers of vanity, the tremendous skies, and I'm trying to unfold the love beneath the bursting smoky clouds. And with a hand to hand, I tried to hold you, because I never want to lose you, for you are the mother of the Arabs, once born, never dead. What do I know, O people of Yemen? Because I love you, and I love those who love you. And even if they stitched my lips, I will rip them apart only to repeat your name. And I love you, and I love those who love you. And I yearn for the day I see you stand on your feet. In faith I hold close to my heart, I believe you will. For I am your complexion, and I am the dryness to your nose. And I am the dryness to your nose. And I am the shine to your forehead. But what do I know? What do I know, oh people of Yemen? What do we all know? Thank you so much. I always still get quite emotional reading that. But thank you so much for having me again. It's been an honour, and I hope that one thing that we can remember today is that all victims of war matter, and that our future is not ours, it's our children's. If we can't make peace today, think about your own children. How do you want to see the world that they live in? So let's work together to build a more peaceful world, because Yemen is now suffering. And I hope that we, as human beings, continue to challenge it so that the war can end. Thank you.